So today, I want to talk about the Pharcyde, a West Coast hip-hop group from the 90s that contained 4 members, Imani, Booty Brown, Fat Lip, and Slim Kid Trey. In their discography, they have 4 albums, 1 EP, and 11 singles. They were first featured in 1992 on the artist's Brand New Heavies album, Heavy Rhyme Experience Volume 1, with their track Soulflower. And later that year, they released their debut album, Bizarre Ride 2, which featured 16 tracks. It had 4 singles, which were Passing Me By, For Better or For Worse, Other Fish, and Your Mama, with Passing Me By becoming the group's biggest hit. This album went certified gold in 1996. The album was highly acclaimed and became one of the most praised and influential hip-hop albums of the 1990s. In October of 1994, they appeared on the Red Hot Organization's compilation album, Stolen Moments, Red Hot and Cool, which was meant to raise awareness on the AIDS epidemic, and they contributed with their track Rubbers. 2 months later, in December, they were featured on the Street Fighter soundtrack with their song Pandemonium, which is one of my favorite tracks from them. Then in 1995, they released their sophomore album, Lab Cabin California, with 17 tracks. This album had a more serious tone compared to their debut album of fun-sounding tracks and lyrics, which resulted in this album receiving lower sales than expected. This album had 3 singles, Drop, She Said, and Runnin'. After this release, member Fat Lip left the group due to increasing problems with the other members. On a side note, this album also has a deluxe edition, which has 2 bonus tracks of Emerald City and Just Don't Matter. We didn't hear much from the group regarding music until the year 2000, where the 3 remaining members put out a 6-track EP in March titled Chapter 1 Testing the Waters. But in November of the same year, they released their 3rd album titled Plain Rap, which had 13 tracks and 2 singles, Trust and Frontline. This album was met with negative reviews, claiming that they sound uninspired and they lack the flair that they had in their debut album. Soon after the release of this album, member Slim Kid Trey left the group to pursue a solo career. Then in 2004, with only 2 members remaining, they released their 4th and final album, Humboldt Beginnings, which had 23 tracks and 2 singles titled You Knew and Illusions. The Pharcyde and fellow rap group Souls of Mischief collaborated to form a supergroup called Almighty Mighty Pythons and plan to release a collab album under the same name, but as of now, only 3 songs emerged from the project that is thought to be forgotten. In 2013, a single was released titled First Place, featuring Mocha Only, and that also is in my top 10 favorite songs from the group. Then in 2022, member Fat Lip released a solo album titled Torpor, which featured a song called My Bad with all 4 original members of the group. This was the first song in 27 years that featured all 4 members again. Now my thoughts on the Pharcyde is they're easily in my top 10 favorite groups of all time. I think their first 4 projects were good. Bizarre Ride 2, Lab Cabin California, Plain Rap, and their EP, those 4 were good, to me. I didn't really care for the 5th project, the Humboldt Beginnings, but slowly it grew on me over time, but still my least favorite. Even the Pandemonium track from the Street Fighter soundtrack, Rubbers from the Red Hot and Cool album, and Soulflower from the Brand New Heavies album, even those 3 tracks right there, you can't go wrong with. So my favorite album from the Pharcyde has to be Bizarre Ride 2. This album right here, I always find myself coming back to it. The songs on it, it's just more upbeat, more fun, tempo type songs, which is what I like more than the Lab Cabin California. But that album is top tier as well. But just the Bizarre Ride 2, this is my favorite. Now I'm going to give you my top 10 favorite songs from the Pharcyde. You can check these out, but in no particular order it goes. We have Pandemonium, Soulflower Remix, Misery, Bullshit, Drop, Devil Music, Other Fish, First Place, Just Don't Matter, and Freaky. These are my top 10 favorite Pharcyde tracks. But overall, they have a solid discography. If I had to rank them in order, I would put Bizarre Ride 1, Lab Cabin 2, Plain Rap 3, Testing the Waters EP 4, and then the Humboldt Beginnings 5. But those first 4 projects you can't go wrong with. If you're not too familiar with the Pharcyde's music, I suggest checking out that list. It ranges from their whole career, from the first album to the last album, and it includes some of those soundtrack songs that they made. But if I had to choose one album to pick from, to dive into, I would say Make It the Bizarre Ride 2.